Hello and welcome to our watercolor journey. Heinrich will show you how he created this beautiful frosty look in the branches of this bouquet. As always, the information and links for the brushes, paints and equipment he used are in the description below. So gear up and let's do this. He started by using Sennelier masking fluid and a large silicone pastel blending brush. He tapped the brush lightly to create splattered dots of masking fluid. He used different ways of tapping on the brush to get smaller and larger dots of masking fluid. If you want to know more about masking fluid, you can have a look at our video about different kinds of masking fluid and masking techniques. The link is in the description below. Let the masking fluid dry naturally. A hairdryer is not a good idea when you have masking fluid on your paper. It makes it very difficult to remove. He's using a silver number 14 mop to wet the entire paper. Make sure that there are no puddles or dry patches. On the palette, we have at number 1, indigo, number 2, Prussian blue, number 3, cobalt turquoise light, number 4, cobalt green, and number 5, Davies gray. He's using the silver black velvet number 12 round to start painting the background. The first color he used was cobalt green, followed by cobalt turquoise light. He used the colors to create a kind of a blue rainbow in the top right hand corner to resemble the sky. You can use any combination of colors you prefer. Use your imagination, experiment with different color combinations and create your own beautiful sky. He randomly kept adding the colors on the right side of the paper, working wet on wet, and making sure that he worked rather fast so that the paper does not dry. He added Davies gray to the rest of the background to start preparing for the shadows of the snow. The marks he made with the Davies gray are roughly in the shape of the branches hanging from a tree. Here he is creating the shadows in the snow on the ground. He's using Davies gray and whatever paints are left on his brush to create the shadows and color reflections in the snow. He's using the silver black velvet number 2 round to start painting in the branches, and because it's still wet on wet, the paint disperses beautifully to create this frosty effect. He's following the Davies gray with indigo and Prussian blue. He's adding it very lightly with the tip of the brush so that the paint can spread on the wet paper. Let your painting dry again naturally because you still have masking fluid on the paper. Once the painting had dried completely, he used a rubber cement eraser to remove all the masking fluid. The cement eraser does not damage the paper, and it also does not do anything to your underlying paint. Now he's using the Princeton stencil brushes in assorted sizes to create the bokeh effect. You can see where the masking fluid had been. There are beautiful white patches where the paper is shining through. When you use the stencil brush, dip it lightly in water and then move it in a circular motion on the paper and dab out the excess water. Do not press too hard so that you don't damage the paper. Make your circles at random and make them in different sizes. The harder you press, the more paint you will lift. So you should work lightly if you want to lift a little bit of paint and press a bit harder if you want to lift more paint. Remember to always rinse your brush before you go to a new color area, because the brush will transfer the color to the new area if it is not cleaned. Dab out the excess water to prevent runbacks. Use various sizes of stencil brushes if you have those. Otherwise, just try to make the bokeh dots larger and smaller with the brush that you have. You can also use a magic sponge and a plastic stencil to create the bokeh dots. Let them overlap because they are not standing alone. They fuse together into the background to create this kind of fuzzy look. So let them overlap or touch each other. Blending them slightly together will enhance the bokeh effect. If you are interested to learn more about tips and techniques for the bokeh effect, have a look at this video. The link is in the description below. The large stencil brush that he's using is an Art Secret number 14, and that one has synthetic hair, so it's rather hard. If you work with a synthetic stencil brush, be careful not to press too hard, as you might lift the fibers of the paper. Now he's using the Escoda number 6 round, and he's going to paint in some more circles, and he's going to use the colors on his palette to paint the circles. Once you've dipped your brush in the paint, dab it off a bit because it shouldn't be too wet, and then move the brush in a circular motion. You can make smaller or larger dots, and you can use darker or lighter shades of the paint on your palette. By using all these existing colors, you can create a lot of texture and variation in your background. Here he's adding a little bit of Hansa Yellow Medium, very lightly, just to give that little bit of light and variation in color in the background. He's adding a little bit more Davies Grey and turquoise to enhance the shadows in the snow. Consistently using the colors on his palette. Here he is using the dry brush technique, where he's turning the brush sideways and using the belly of the brush to create more texture in the snow. The colors that are used in the snow on the ground is reflecting the colors that he has in the sky. To create highlights in the branches, he's going to use the Herend No. 6 Eradicator brush. Dip the brush in water, shake off the excess water, and then lightly scratch out the highlights. Dab out the excess water. This is a hog hair brush, so it is really hard. It's a hard brush. If you press too hard, it might damage your paper. He allowed the paint to settle a little bit, and then he used the Princeton No. 1 script or rigger to paint the branches in the foreground. These branches are painted with a darker shade because they are in the foreground, so he's using a fairly strong mix of indigo to start painting in the branches. He really likes branches. Now he's adding Raw Umber by Daniel Smith to the indigo mix to make it a little bit darker. The darker branches give dimension and depth to the painting. Some of the branches are painted thicker, just to give a little bit of variation. He's mixing some of the other colors from the palette with the Davies Grey to give variation in the shadow and, of course, the reflection of the light or colors around it. Adding some more texture to the snow and the ground with different shades of the colors on his palette. Now he's going to use permanent white gouache, and that is to paint in some actual snow onto the shadows and also onto the branches, giving the effect of snow lying there. And of course, there must always be a bit of splattering. The splattering with the gouache gives the idea of snow falling. He's using the tip of the brush to make bigger or more irregular snowflakes. Once the tape is removed, you can stand back and evaluate what you have created. Sign your painting when you are done. It is your creation and worthy of your name. Thank you so much